Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Now, I must apologize. I have been very busy the last few days with essentially the inability to produce new content. However, hopefully, things are going to settle down and we will get back on track with daily content. Now, we are continuing to cover the ongoing war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, over the last several days, we have been continuing to hear about this so-called Ukrainian offensive that was taking place, allegedly taking place, in the potato fields of Kursk, the frozen potato fields of Kursk. Now, the question has to be asked, was there and is there an ongoing Ukrainian offensive operation? So first, what is an offensive operation? Well, an offensive operation is designed to attack, engage, and destroy the enemy and or take control of objectives, territory. So with that being said, have the Ukrainians initiated offensive operations in and around Kursk? No, they have not. The Ukrainians have been utilizing platoon and company-sized elements to conduct raiding operations against Russian forces. These operations are not designed to take control of territory. Now, the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian military, the Ukrainian political apparatus in Kiev is using these small reconnaissance and force, these small raiding groups, as reason to declare an offensive operation in Kursk. But in the truest sense of the words, it is not an offensive operation. The Ukrainians are not taking control of territory in the frozen potato fields of Kursk. Let's have a quick look at what has happened, again, the deep state map over the course of the last few days. So the area in blue on the northwestern quadrant of the Kursk salient, the Kursk pocket, the Kursk incursion. Watch what happens. They lost territory. No additional territory has been taken. Ongoing operations by Russian forces are focusing on engaging and destroying Ukrainian units through the use of air power and long-range artillery to fix and destroy Ukrainian units in the Kursk pocket, causing Ukrainian casualties, decreasing the capacity of the Ukrainian military, decreasing the morale and the will to fight of the Ukrainian military. As I've talked about before, if the Russians really wanted to, they could retake the Kursk pocket in all probability within a week. If the Russians truly wanted to launch a concerted operation to retake control of Kursk, they could do so. But that does not benefit the Russian military. In this war of attrition, what benefits the Russian Federation is fixing Ukrainian forces in the Kursk pocket and degrading those units that the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian military continues to send into the Kursk pocket. And that is what is happening. The Ukrainians are not moving forward. They're not taking territory. They may be conducting raiding operations. And yes, both sides are taking casualties. It is a high-intensity war. But the Ukrainians are taking more casualties. Day in and day out, through the use of Russian guided glide bombs and much more artillery, the Ukrainians are taking more casualties. Again, as I've talked about before, the Ukrainians do not have air power operating in this area. The Russians do. The Ukrainians do have multiple launch rocket systems, HIMARS, that are deployable into this area. They have drones that they are operating in this area. But they don't have the capacity to drop 500, 1,000, 2,000 pound GLONASS guided glide bombs. The Russians do. You are going to inherently take more casualties if you are subjected to that kind of firepower. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, if we move from the Kursk pocket to other areas, such as the Donbass offensive, we continue to see the Russians conducting envelop and destroy operations. Novosilka. Let's go back over the last few days and see what has transpired in this area. This area here. Makrovika. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Again, Ukrainian units fixed, enveloped, destroyed, pulled back. And the Russians continue to envelop and encircle Novosilka. Further to the northeast, Kurakova. Again, the Russians continue operations. Moving forward, seizing control. Look at these areas here. South of Kurakova, to the north of Kurakova. Watch what has happened. Again, the Russians steadily moving forward, advancing with platoons and company, battalion set formations, covered by air power and heavy artillery. Kursk. The Russians continue to flank the southwestern quadrant of Kursk. That is happening. Non-stop. Torsk. The fighting now is taking place through the entirety of the town. The Russians have taken the center of the city and are now conducting clearing operations on the western outskirts of the city. Further north of Torsk, operational area Kupiansk. Envelopment operations continue, steadily moving forward. Let's get a bigger view of the Donbass. Kind of go back and look what is happening. And then fast forward. So there you have it. And again, from the information that we're getting in terms of the morale and the cohesiveness of the Ukrainian military, it is it is plummeting. It is falling off the charts. And as I've talked about before, eventually we're going to reach a point where you undoubtedly will see a general collapse of the Ukrainian military. And at that point, you're going to get a lot more news reports. There will be questions being asked in terms of direct intervention with boots on the ground by NATO forces. But again, the Russians are not going to stop. These methodical encirclement operations, these continued operations by the Russians are not going to stop. And in all probability, they will escalate and the tempo will increase. We are seeing additional deployment of Russian resources near Zaporizhia. It would not surprise me if we were to see some sort of operation by the Russians moving up the eastern bank of the Dnieper River in the direction of Zaporizhia. I think the end goal for the Russians would possibly be to seize Zaporizhia. And again, I've talked about before that if and when the general collapse of the Ukrainian military starts, that the Russians will have the capability of recrossing the Dnieper and moving back into to Kherson, especially if Ukrainian forces simply vacate these areas. And given the ability of Russian long-range fires that are now engaging Ukrainian troops as they move in and out of Kherson, as they continue to strike Ukrainian depots in Kherson, continuing to strike Ukrainian combat formations in Kherson, that is going to quicken the process. This is going to be a very long winter. It is going to be a very long and bloody winter. And as always, we will continue to cover. Thank you for joining us today. More to come. As always, have a good day.